WonderCon, and welcome. I am Markia McCarty. I will be moderating this Ragnarok presentation. The game that we're talking about today is Gods of Metal Ragnarok, developed by Hunters Entertainment. So we're really going to get into this heavy metal fantasy RPG, and we have an amazing panel of people that are going to really go to town on all things rock, in particular this game. So let's just go ahead and jump into this because the next half hour is all about metal. So to go ahead and start us off, I'm Ivan Van Norman, co-founder of Hunters Entertainment. Please introduce yourselves to anyone who doesn't know you quite yet.
I think you just said it, Markia. My name is Ivan Van Norman. I'm the co-founder of Hunters Entertainment. This was a random little brainchild, about 4 or 5 years ago, and I am just excited to have a bunch of people who are out like helping us make this crazy game and putting it out into the world. It's an epic heavy metal fantasy, and I've been wanting to make this game since I was 10 years old.
I think we've been wanting someone to make this game since we were all 10 years old. So we appreciate this. And of course, the rest of our panel is our creative collaborators that are going to be fleshing out this beautiful, ridiculous, awesome heavy metal world with us. So Gabe Hicks, can you please introduce yourself and what attracted you to Gods of Metal Ragnarok?
Yeah, so I'm Gabe Hicks. I'm a cosplayer, voice actor, and game designer. I've been fortunate enough to work with Paizo, Darrington Press, and a bunch of others. And I got reached out to about Ragnarok, and I was like looking at the basis, and I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome as hell. It's absolute chaos, but in a way that like people who don't necessarily play a bunch of games can enjoy. And it feeds the RPG nerd with the person who just wants absolute chaos together. And like every time we have a meeting, I'm like, oh my God, it makes sense. And there's never been a meeting where we didn't feel like something was growing and was getting better. And that's the best feeling. Oh, I'm ready to Ragnarok.
Yeah, I love that you just said that. One of my experiences with playing Ragnarok, we ended up, me and my band ended up taking out this giant Biat worm. And after we ended up slaying it, I looked over at Ivan. I was like, wait, can I tame this and ride it? And he just laughed and he's like, yes, you can. I love how anything goes with this.
That's been the conversation. It's like, okay, how do we make it so that if they want to do something, the maestro can say yes?
This is a yes and game.
Yes.
It's 100. This is a yes and game because to say anything other would not be metal. But then the joy is also making sure that there's some viability to it. So it's not just like, oh yeah, go ahead and ride it. It's like, okay, now that you're on the worm, like here's what you get to do. It's everything is mechanically supported, but storytelling focused.
Yes. Oh.
LaSalla Wall, can you please introduce yourself and let us know what was the drum beat that called you forth into the metal land that is Ragnarok?
Yes, hello, I'm Lizelle. I'm a Danish role player from the northern wastes. And really what excites me the most about this, I'm a LARPer, but tabletop role-playing offers the opportunity to live out something that is so amazing and so over the top that you wouldn't be able to recreate it in a LARP, for instance. We can do many things, but can you go full metal? Can you make gigantic explosions? Can you play out your wildest fantasy of absolutely trashing, wrecking the tavern room in which your band is staying, and leave without paying the bill, blow up the entire town, and just, go out on another adventure? I don't think you can. And that's what excites me the most about writing for this project. I will say I'm also excited about, doing physical stuff for my eventual sessions that I run. I'm a prop maker and a LARP organizer. So bringing some physicality into it for my sessions, costuming also, and that sort of thing is also something that excites me.
Lycel's been literally taking the puzzle pieces of this world, which was basically spaghetti at some point. We were just throwing concepts and realms of like things that we thought were fun and interesting. And I've given her the arduous task of taking all these puzzle pieces and saying, okay, now build a semi-cohesive world, but don't make it too cohesive because it's metal, you know. It's
no, flesh it out, but make it chaotic and
we're shattering these lands
because we don't want anything boring here. That's not what we're about. So throw it out if it's not exciting.
It's been great. You know, we're diving in deep. Even in the last 2 weeks, a lot has happened in the like, oh, this is a world that has like a map now and shit.
And last but certainly not least, our creative collaborator, Chris Bissett. Can you tell us a little bit about your design background, your rock background, and then also what in the world? It's like, oh, do you hear that? Oh, it's Ragnarock. Tell us why it pulled you into the fold.
Yeah, hi. I'm Chris Bissett. I'm a tabletop game designer from Manchester in the UK. And when I'm not writing games, I'm the vocalist in a metal band as well. You spend most of my time on tour, but not last year for reasons that are obvious to anyone who's been paying attention. So when Ivan reached out about Ragnarok and I saw an excuse to blend games and metal, the two things that I do, I was like, hell yeah. And I'm so excited I'm punching my mic into myself. Yeah, it's just been rad. Like I remember being 4 years old and finding my first Black Sabbath tape in my dad's office, and like writing on Ragnarok has just been like recreating that feeling from the word go, just like throwing myself into this world that makes absolutely zero sense, but is absolutely awesome. It's been amazing.
It's funny because when we first reached out, it was because of a mutual friend of ours, Kat Evans, right? Yes. Who has also done some writing for us, and we adore Kat. And when I was kind of lamenting that I was I need some help with this, like I'm stuck in here, and she was like, oh, no, I got your guy. And rolled right in, and it's been good. You were the first person who like I talked to about this project, and it was semi-validating because you were like, no, I get it. It makes sense. Like the rules are not just a bunch of random things jumbled together. No, this actually this from an outside perspective, this plays outside of a GM, you know.
Yeah,
facilitating
totally.
it.
Right. Then let's go ahead and just start this conversation. We're going to make it as organic as possible. We are literally just letting people know about this amazing gaming world that all of you are creating together. So let's just start fleshing out the game world for everybody. Whatever jumps out in your mind first is what we want to talk about.
I just want to say this is a game that I've learned, and I didn't realize this because I just wanted to make a game that was like heavy metal inspired, but I've slowly learned, and Kia, you're a huge part of this, is that this is a game of like releasing your inner angst is what it is. It's this very much a game of like, it's very, I think you literally, your character that you made for playtest was Carthusis, right? Like cathartic. And now we're making a world in which there's a gray land of Mundania, in which all the boring ass mortals live, right? They exist in this world. And then, but then the metal gods, seeing their suffering and their strife, they come and they grab people out from this world of Mundania and throw them into this angsty world of Ragnarok, which is where we are now, and or not where we are now physically, but where we are in the development part of it, making it. But like, I guess I'm just curious because now that I'm starting to realize that it's such an angsty game, is there anything that you three are kind of like, does that check out with you? Or do you feel like there's another theme that's going on inside of the game that is also as angsty as angst?
It's the game where you want a lot of games you don't get a chance to be over the top until it's like later end game. But in this, like at the beginning, your character is ridiculous. It's pretty clear, and it's like, take that, know that, have fun with it, because the game gives you like, does it work or doesn't it work? So if it doesn't work, you know that, you go to the next ridiculous thing. If it works, keep going. Like it's
notoriety 0. You don't climb up to Thor, you start at Thor. then you get more ridiculous, like all the variations of it leading up to him, because everyone's a demigod. We literally say every player in the game is a demigod, and they have a unique item, weapon, and outfit. Yes, literally their outfit that they can wear, and that becomes part of their identity and their magical abilities, and that's how they express themselves. And we do it with D4s, right? Like that's actually I'd be curious as to talk about. It's like when I first told you that this was going to be a D4 game, what was the initial reaction?
There's a whole lot less numbers. Like it's people look. I like D10s, but if they're doing the thing that's like it's a 1 in 4 chance, just use a 1 or a 1 to 4. Like I don't need a 7 or an 8 or a 9 or a 10. Just tell me 4 works or 1 doesn't.
Right.
And D4 is the most metal die, right? It's basically a weapon.
That's
definitely also the one that will wreck you the most if you step on it.
It's the most dangerous. Technically, like they're caltrops. Like
that's exactly what they
made
are.
a metal game with caltrops.
So fun story. We did have when we were making. So we had zinc dice. We had zinc dice in the Kickstarter, and when we were first prototyping them with Die Hard dice, I'm like, I want them sharp. I want when you pick them up in your hand and roll them, I want you to bleed, right? That's what I literally told them. And then for reasons that are very obvious in what I just said, we can't do that.
I'm sure that was some conversations.
That was a conversation. So they still look metal, but they now look metal in the way that, like, they've been kind of cut and shurikened, but we can't sell lethal dice weapons as part of our game. However, I wanted to let you know that we tried.
At this point, they're pretty lethally awesome. I mean, they have the Ragnarok logo emblazoned on them. I've gotten to play with a prototype before when I got to Metal Maestro, which is our game master term for Ragnarok. When I got to Metal Maestro a few games on Hunters Entertainment's Twitch channel. They are so heavy, you feel like a rock god while you are rolling them.
I want to heavy metal, would you say?
Into many people's hands.
They're heavy metal. They're very heavy metal. Nox literally crushed regular plastic dice with them. He took them and he smashed regular dice just to see if it would happen, and they do. So Nox is one of our other creative leads on this, who's been helping me out and keeping us all kind of together on this. Well, so when we're because I know that I have kind of Gabe and Chris, we've been focusing a lot on the positions, right? And we kind of like handed them off to you, and we're like, hey, we want to do some stuff. Do you want to talk about like how the positions work in your mind and how these abilities kind of like tie into it, so that it does? Because we talk about a lot. We're like, hey, this is a combat focused game, right? At the end of the day, this is still a game in which you beat up monsters. And that is something that happens in role-playing games, and we are just taking that and we're embracing it and saying yes. But it's not. But it's not grid-based, right? It's still theater of the mind combat. So would both of you want to talk about that a little bit, like what that feels like to write for that? Because it's it wasn't easy when I thought about it, but now I'm handing the responsibility to you two. So.
And then also explain what player positions are for people that are normal tabletop role-playing people.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So positions are, I guess, the equivalent of, if you played other role-playing games, the equivalent of classes, right? They are the role that your rock demigod takes in the world of Ragnarok. So the ones I've been writing are the Brutalizer, which is like the in-your-face front man swinging a mic stand, like screaming at everyone, taking no crap off anybody. And like we've got the Amplord, who is like the gear-based gearhead who has a box of tricks. And like I've been writing them as like almost like guitar pedals that you throw on the floor and stomp on, and they create these cool effects that like affect the world around you and help your friends and like slay monsters. One of the really cool things that's been doing it is because the focus is on like not just individual characters, but you as a band. Like a lot of the stuff that we've been writing is like really, how do these abilities all tie together, and how are these characters all going to work together to solve these problems in combat, and like writing all this stuff that is going to help your friends do their cool things has been really, really fun. And like getting out of that tactical grid-based mindset and onto like, let's just do some really fun. Let's give players permission to do cool things and give them the tools they need to do cool narrative things instead of saying, you do some damage, somebody else have a turn, which is boring.
I love writing for these because after some of the conversations we've had, without giving away too much, the way we made the positions is that like if a band was 4 people of the same position, we wanted progression to be different for all of them if they wanted that. And it can be like one person is going way further ahead of the progression, another person is staying closer to like maybe lower tier stuff, but they still are able to keep up with each other, or they can go different paths or anything. So it's having a band of positions of the same position can still be a weird, wicked, unique experience. Because like as well, like with the stuff you have, Ivan talked about their outfit and their gear and stuff. It's all different. And that's what's so freaking cool to me. It's the variety is so narrative and open-ended that like experienced players are like, oh my God, let's all do the same thing. Or like new players, they don't have to feel like, oh, we all have to pick something different. You could literally, I realized you could have newcomers all play the same position to learn together, and then they'll also have different experiences.
I particularly like that you brought that up because one of the questions that tends to come up with Ragnarok, where it's just like, oh, what if we all choose the same tone? Which is like, what if we all choose the same god? There's 6 different gods, the metal gods that you can choose from. One of my favorites is Calamity, who's like god of sorrow, like the death god, sits
Emo
on a
god.
throne. Sits on a throne of skulls, and I love RPing with Calamity, and it's like you could literally have an entire band that is like, yes, we're into this death metal, but it doesn't have to be like thrash death metal. It could literally be like, no, we just love the blackest black unicorn, like that kind of a thing. Like we like black 3.0 unicorns, and this is what we ride, that kind of thing. But this makes me think of the practical elements that have to go into Ragnarok. And Lysel, you were saying with your LARPing experience and how you've been giving a lot of, by Ivan, you've been given a lot of practical pieces to help flesh out the Ragnarok world. Can you talk a little bit more about that, or themes that you've run across in your work with us so far?
Yes, so I can share with you a little bit about my process in writing and in trying to flesh out all of these realms of Ragnarok to make them exciting places for the bands and the avatars to venture into. I enjoy putting together kind of different playlists of metal and then sitting and going by the mood of those places. And also metal tends to invoke a very clear image in my mind of the kind of places, the kind of epic battles and conflicts and heroics that play out, or the devastation, or indeed the angst, especially across genres. My favorite genre is power metal, which lends itself very well to this kind of a fantasy feel. But there are other kinds that are bleaker, like gothic metal as well. Or Nordic metal, which we have a lot of where I'm from, which is all about, bleak, frozen wastes and what you might encounter there. And they are not always, happy endings necessarily. And there are indeed very many opportunities for the avatars to end up with tragic tales, I feel, because the challenges that we're presenting them with are intense sometimes. And I enjoy picking things from my favorite bands, from my favorite styles, and trying to weave them into Ragnarok to give it a feel. Like if this section of the world feels very like a gothic metal thing with creatures that match that sort of mood, that are dark and broody or mysterious. And that's how I'm going about it right now.
Love that. It's because one of the things that I enjoy, like with games in general, and what you're saying that you're bringing to the project, is that relatability. And and it's like relatability because you're utilizing aspects of rock that are there. It's like people will be familiar with that, and then other people be like, "Ooh, I didn't even know that this was a possibility, that this was a thing." And you get to have all of that in this one game. So it's like that more accessible.
Yes, I'm hoping also that it will be recognizable to metal fans, that they can pick and say, "Oh, right, this sounds like something, I'm familiar with from my favorite metal music." That would be really great. Weave that in there. Little Easter eggs as well.
It's been trying to find the specific tone of this project has been such a journey for our team, because it is really not something that you can just like explain in a sentence, right? Like a lot of games that have really strong world building, they have a hook or something that goes into it. But we're trying to basically say that we're making a game that is, is inspired by all the classical fantasy elements that you know and love, but it's a world centered on heavy metal that has a gray mirror dimension in which everything is boring. And yes, it's musically inspired, but it's not a giant music pun, right? That's something that we've always been playing back and forth with too. It's like all of these great metal references and all these great this place we want to play, like it's a heavy metal, like literally the magazine heavy metal album cover or comic cover or magazine cover, but it's not just a bunch of people walking around doing music jokes. This is like can still be a bleak, dark fantasy world that has inspiration from music inside of it, just beyond like referencing song titles like The Land of Ice and Snow, or talking about like the what do we have? We have the Bone Snap plains as well too, which is kind of our desert, right? And the Southern Soul Sea. Like these are all things that you would expect in fantasy worlds as well too. But when you have, the gods of metal looking over these territories and these people, and you have like world problems like the silence, which is something we're introducing in the game. It's like our version of, the anti-magic that slowly is, creeping in from the corners like any other, invading force, and it's being held back by the bell ringers, which are these cultists who clang and make as much noise as possible along the perimeter of where the silence is intruding in on. And they live their entire lives to ring these bells and then collapse dead on the pathway before someone else just joins the bell ringers, and that whole process continues forward. It's like there's some cool stuff in here, and we can and we're saying, hey, here's some stuff to start with, go and make your own, right? Like, have fun. There's a lot of here be dragons in our world. So
yeah, something that we touched upon a little bit earlier, where we were talking about the gear for each of the players. Maybe we could expand a little bit about that for those that aren't familiar with, that aren't familiar with Ragnarok and the gear for the players. You can have your outfit, you can have your weapon slash instrument, and then you also have your accessory, and each of those can have abilities that are attached to them. As you traverse Ragnarok and take out creatures, or get that gig, or end up making friends with that werewolf or whatever, you can build your resonance, and with that your gear can grow. So that's one of the reasons why you don't have to do so many stats. So let's talk a little bit about how player friendly and play forward that you've made Ragnarok, and how you've incorporated that in your own ways.
I think that's perfect for what Ivan said about it being a yes and game. Like someone asks, like, hey, can my weapon be a xylophone? Yes. Can it be covered in spikes? Yes. Like it because it's defined. So like your starting gear is this thing. What you want it, like it functions this way. What you want it to actually be, though, that's up to you. Can my accessory be the skull of one of my enemies that's covered in green gelatinous goo that oozes them whenever I'm sad? Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you
here's
want
what
that to
it
slow your
does.
enemy? Do you want that to slow your enemy? That's fine.
Yes.
Oh, and your xylophone that has spikes on it. Do you want that to be its ranged attack? Because we can totally do that.
Yeah, like, oh, is it you hit a couple notes and then it shoots a beam and that's what your range attack is? Awesome. Now like you build that together. So it's that open-ended gear of like, okay, nope, you pick this knife because that's what you can choose from, and the knife has to do these things, and then it has to do these things. It's just their circumstance. No, it's like, hey, what do you want it to be? You want it to be that? All right, what do you want it to do? This thing? Got it. All right,
Because
it does it.
ironically, all of the abilities are, and it's weird to say, but it's true. They're mechanically dry, right? They don't
Yes.
have a lot of flavor around what the abilities do. But that's because they're ready for your spices, right?
Yeah.
They're ready for your unique flavor when it comes to how you want to take the ability and express that. Like so many people forget that like magic missile, when you cast magic missile in D&D, it's literally whatever you want it to be. When those balls of energy manifest and they shoot out to do whatever it is, there is nothing to say that they can't be, like 2d4 flying chickens, spectral chickens that are just now slapping somebody inside of the face, or whatever it is. Like
It's additive gameplay. It's not
additive
it's not restrictive. It's additive, as in
Yes.
you add in what you want, and then as you keep playing, as it improves, as you put in resonance to make this thing better, it gets better, and not just mechanically, narratively.
because the abilities all are structured in the way that you like buy a tech tree in Diablo at the moment, but they also have upgrades as well too. So if you are really excited about what an ability is doing and you want to invest more into the upgrades of that ability, it feels very much like a dungeon crawling tech tree style game without getting, because for me it's like the worst part of those games is when you max out the tech tree and you've got nothing else left to do, right? This game is very much not going to do that. It's like Chris and Gabe were saying earlier, there's going to be lots of paths of play for each of the positions, hopefully without being too overwhelming when you open up that spread and see that ability tree like laid out in front of you. So hopefully it's inspiring.
Lysel, as a LARPer, is that just like the best thing ever to be able to picture all of this gear and the abilities that could happen with it?
I'm already considering additions I could make to my leather jacket that would, fit the style of game, or what experimenting with wild wigs for the first time. That's something I haven't really done, but absolutely feel like I need to do for this particular game. I also enjoy illustrating my character sheets all of the time, and I can feel a lot of ways that I could make something special out of a Ragnarok character sheet, just illustrating characters and the way that they present themselves.
Chris, with has this changed any of your like rock aesthetic working with Ragnarok? I mean, with all of these possibilities, and I'm sure with like Ivan's enthusiasm with this world.
It's been really fun being able to like channel stuff from my life into the game, because that's not something you get to do very often. Like, we write a lot of games about like being in space or being in a dungeon or whatever, and like, I don't know about any of you, but I've never been to space, so I don't know what that's like. But like, I know what it's like to be a band on the road, and I know what it's like to have to live and breathe music, and like to be not in a world where you're fighting monsters. But it's been really, really satisfying to just like take chunks of things that I've done and like stories from the road and like just throw them at this game and see what sticks, and like making abilities for positions out of things that happened that I will never actually talk about because people would kill me. Like, it's been really fun.
Well, I'm going to spoil one thing, because one of my favorite abilities you've written for the Amplord, Chris, and this is again very much being about how much fantasy and how much music can this be. It's like you wrote an ability and it's pretty low on the Amplords. It's just on that trajectory of support, but it's like it's the tour bus. Right?
Yeah.
Like the ability is literally you summon, and granted, when the ability starts out without any upgrades, it doesn't go anywhere, right? But now it's a place like Leomund's tiny hut where you can go and then just chill, like you're just in the bus for the night, right? And you have a little bit of shelter for whatever it is.
It's amazing how much time on tour you spend worrying about where you're going to sleep.
Where you're going to, right? So, and even though there's lots of towns and settlements and taverns and places, one of the things we didn't talk about either, and this is a little bit of a lore thing too, but I think it's worth mentioning as well, is that like all the avatars in Ragnarok are physically distinct, like from what the denizens, because there are denizens of Ragnarok, like just regular, people and humanoids who are trying to live their lives in this unforgiving world, right? But then they see these avatars walk around. It's like seeing Skyrim peasants next to like Arthas from World of Warcraft, right? And when you put them right next to each other, that's just it's perfect, because in my mind both of those can exist in this world at the same time. And so you can clearly see when an avatar is walking around, because it is like watching a demigod just chill around, and then they walk up to a tavern, and based on how much they know this avatar, they just get drinks on the house, right? But they're going to make sure that, those burrowing beotworms don't come up and destroy their entire township, because they're going to go down there and slay them, kind of a situation. So we're working so hard on the money system in this, because we do not want like copper, silver, gold, little diddly bits in this. We want something that's like, again, feels very storytelling first, right? So does anyone want to talk about our sweet ass notoriety system, or or do I have to do it?
Well, so like notoriety is also interesting because instead of like just using numerical values, we're trying to make it open, so people who might not play a bunch of tabletop games are able to do this. And like we give a guide of like, here's moments when your notoriety would increase, to give the maestro like a way to base it off of. But other than that, it's like achievements are what make you get stronger. Achievements are what make you succeed, grow in power and ability. It's not like just, okay, you have to kill 30,000 skeletons. No, it's like, you know what? You killed the Titan with 18 heads, 13 swords, and 12 feet for whatever the hell reason. That was really difficult. Here's a good gauge of like how your notoriety would increase for your party.
And
like
we're calling it glory is what it
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
So we're basically issuing out glory based on milestone achievements and things like that in order to say out. But still, just like experience points, the more glory you get, the higher notoriety you are. The more notoriety, the more places you can explore, because people know you, right? And then that, of course, in turn increases some of your abilities. But even outside of like player progression, we haven't touched upon it too much yet. But one of the things we're really hoping to do is work on what we're calling anthems, which are band specific abilities that are created as a result of milestones in the game. So like that 13-headed Titan you were talking about, Gabe, like slaying that creature, that is an event that warrants building an anthem. And now maybe there's a really cool ability that only your band can play, or what would be considered this band can play, because they are the ones who did this, and now they can channel together their anthem for like, the equivalent of like a Final Fantasy VII summon materia, where it's just like an ultimate attack, right?
I mean, we can even talk about it, but anthems, like the way that we've defined them, they could be anything. It could be like, you know what, if your party did these 3 ridiculous things that are obscure, give them something like this that could lead into their anthem. Like if they beat 4 colossal titans in a row or something, it's like, you know what, like their anthem is Titan Slayers. What does that sound like? What does it feel like?
Because again, the anthem, to me, they're songs, right? That's how I feel about it. They're like marker milestones that are a part of their event. So when they do this, they're invoking like some incredible moment from their past that they're now getting into it. And I don't know how it works. I don't know what it feels like yet, but I feel like it's one of those, okay, the session's over, right? You did this. Is great. Awesome. Great job. Okay. You've all earned an anthem, right? So let's talk about what that anthem is going to be. And they'll probably describe like their favorite moment from the session, right? It's gamifying your favorite moment from a session and then turning it into an ability that is supposed to feel satisfying and probably is going to be a little overpowered, but who cares? You all made it, and it's your friends, and you did it. And it's not going to be easy to reenact. It's not going to be easy to like invoke that anthem again in a session down the road. But when it does, it'll be awesome.
Yeah, that brings up something. Particularly, I was wondering if we would get around to this, because that feels like to me like a kind of breaking the fourth wall of the game, where it's like you're literally bringing that into your own life with your friends. Something that I'd love for us to touch on, well, for each of us too. So yeah, 2020 happened. Wow. It was 10 years long and also the longest day ever. So with that, something that Ivan said earlier, the character that I had made for my time in Ragnarok is Parthusis. And for me, that was it was a hybrid of Cthulhu along with my own catharsis that I needed to be able to have for this game. Being a howler, helped a lot, even though I was like at home behind my own video screen, which, we might still be doing for a bit while the world starts, back around. Something with this, how is it that Ragnarok how will people respond to Ragnarok? How do you hope people will respond to Ragnarok? How do you feel like it will draw them out to be able to reconnect over this? And I'd love to hear from everyone on this.
I mean, there's a reason why these specific people are called within the lore, within the world, to be avatars. And it is typically that they are the most repressed. We have something that's called a tedium or a suffering that you decide upon your character creation, something that sucks, basically, in this person's life in Mundania. And the stronger this feeling, their tedium, there is a breaking point during which they are summoned into Ragnarok, where it all breaks loose and the gods of metal recognize something in this person that they can turn into, and the power that they can draw upon. And that's all because of repressed anger or frustration. And I think that's something that, especially after 2020, a lot of people may be able to relate to a little bit in various ways, whether it is due to your employment suffering or financial issues, or just being stuck somewhere and unable to live out, to see your friends or family, or to live out your hobbies. So I think maybe that is something where this game shines, and you can really let loose and play out some of that frustration.
Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it's what we were saying earlier. Like, the game really is giving you just permission to let loose and go wild and have fun with it. Like, we've all been cooped up inside for a year, or like, having to work through a pandemic or whatever, and like, we've all had to put our lives on hold. And it's fun because the characters that you play in Ragnarok have sort of done the same thing. Like, they're all dragged out of Mundania, where they're existing in these kind of unfulfilled, very dull, very repetitive lives. And I think we've all been there for the past year plus. And yeah, the game is just saying, do you know what? Forget about all that for an hour, 2 hours, sit down with your friends and like throw on some music and just crack open a beer and have a good time. And it's just giving people permission to forget about things for a little bit and just engage in some pure escapism, I think, is what I'm getting out of it anyway.
Gabe?
I want people to be able to play this game with friends that they know are creative, but sometimes other games just restrict you, and not even intentionally, just they feel like they have to give a guide for what you to follow. I want this to be the game where like they don't have that. They can just be weird and creative and ridiculous, and the game rewards you for that. And it's just like, let's just tell a weird, fun story and have a good time doing it, and then realize how much fun it actually is. Like that's especially when you can become an avatar, become the avatar that's not in Mundania. Become that person, like Chris said, at least for a couple hours, to just feel like you are powerful and wild and a metal god. I love it. That's what I want.
Ivan?
I've been just, I guess you could say just preaching the gospel of Ragnarok for years now, and I'll be honest, like I don't have anything to say that these three haven't already said, and I actually am like a little moved and emotional to hear somebody else say it and get it and like want to, like is taking that forward and kind of just resonating and responding with it, because that's all it was. Everything you've all said, it's all perfect. It just seems like the right time for this. And I am officially proud and speechless is all.
Well, it sounds like you've got a really great band that's been brought together to be able to create this for all the rest of us to be able to enjoy. You
Yeah, a
know, in
little
fact,
adventuring
after this
band.
is over, we're going to work on our own anthem. You know,
We're gonna make this WonderCon anthem milestone that will build an ability for us. Speaking of which, too, though, speaking of the music you're talking about, Chris, we are planning on like having a legit soundtrack for this game as well, too. Actually, we're having, as of this meeting, we will have we'll be meeting shortly, like the following week, with Rezodrone, which is, you know, Jason Bozeman and Jason Charles Miller, and they're going to do a full soundtrack, like just something that you play on, not just like, oh, okay, here's some music background, you know, here's like a spooky dungeon or a, you know, like creepy forest. It's like, no, these are things you play when you describe that moment in the game that we all are trying to replicate and talk about. It's like, put on this track, right? Like, and it's going to be on a vinyl, dude, a vinyl, which is also your GM screen. So, you know,
there are so many beautiful parts of Ragnarok that can respond so many different ways for people, from the custom zinc dice that are like their own types of weapons to the GM screen / vinyl that you can have with this project, to the gameplay and like to the expansion that is coming.
Yeah. Can you say what's that expansion called, Kia? Can you tell us what that expansion is?
You know what, Ivan?
Oh,
I think it's the Apaka art to like Pago.
Art.
Yep.
Apocal Art Rockapelago.
There it is. There it is.
Now say it 3 times.
Apocal Art Rockapelago.
Yeah, we could literally talk about Ragnarok for hours, but this particular panel was just to whet the appetite of what is being created, what is coming down the way, and to also let people know what Ragnarok is. Gods of Metal Ragnarok, developed by Hunters Entertainment, with these wonderful creative collaborators, Lysel Awal, Chris Bissett, Gabe Hicks, and of course, the creator of Gods of Metal Ragnarok, Ivan Van Norman. For this panel, I've been your moderator, Markia McCarty. I'm also marketing manager of Hunters Entertainment. I kind of buried the lead there. I am, so I'm, you know, what is it? I'm not only a cheerleader, I'm a member. Kind of a deal, yeah.
And one who is helped put this all together. I really appreciate you taking the time to like organize all of this, Kia. It's great.
I want everybody to know about this game because I intend on playing this game with everyone. So yes, please check out Gods of Metal Ragnarok. Enjoy the rest of your WonderCon. Go ahead and look at your scheduling because Hunters Entertainment is running games for the 2 days of WonderCon, which is March 26th and March 27th. We'll be running things like Outbreak Undead, Alice is Missing, along with a number of other games that you can go ahead and check out with us. But go ahead and check us out at huntersentertainment.com. And please also follow these wonderful creative collaborators across the internets. They are doing way more things than what they're doing with us, and this is just like a little tip of the iceberg of what these designers are putting out into the world. So thanks so much. Be kind to yourself, and above all else, play games.
Gather, my chosen, and heed the call to a saga of adventure, a song to end all. Forged from the cord, 2 worlds given birth, one made of awesome, the other no worth. Mutilated, abused, the cord was unstrung. When their meal was shaped, a gray waste begun. Born of the remainder, its fate was unbound. A land of pure metal, the glorious sound. Rise, find your glory. Rise and be free upon the fields of Ragnarok to victory. The gods of metal cry out, demanding blood, sweat, and fear. Seek treasure, find glory, pay tribute for all to hear. Faith must be proven in the pits of these lands. Your songs must rise above as the chosen form bands. Immortality awaits those avatars who believe. With blade, steel, and destiny, what tales shall you weave? Rise, shed your shackles, rise and be free. Deep in the halls of Ragnarok, ascend to victory! Ragnarok